What would you say for those individuals, running a practice and being very successful, that just big picture, what it takes to actually compete in a market like this?
Well, of course, the market today, particularly in Las Vegas, is a lot different than it was, 40 plus years ago. When I started advertising, there was no competition. I was the only competition. And I have an interesting story, Chris, on why I started going on TV. In the very early 80s, must have been 1981, and one day I was watching TV, and we have a hospital here called Sunrise Hospital. And one day I'm watching TV, and there's an ad for Sunrise Hospital came on. Now, flashback 45 years ago, you never heard of a hospital advertising. And the first thing I thought was, why would a hospital have to advertise for business? It's a necessity. People need
Right.
medical care to go to a hospital. Well, Sunrise Hospital did a study, and in certain instances, hospitals are nothing more than very similar to hotels. They have vacancy factors, and Sunrise Hospital realized that their rooms were full from Monday to Friday, and the vacancy was significant on the weekends. In those days, of course, there was very few people who were admitted directly into a hospital, unless you were a super emergency. What would happen is a doctor would admit you, and then the doctor would discharge you, preferably your family doctor. And they realized that the doctors waited for the weekend to end to admit patients. So they would admit them on Monday, and they wanted to get them out of the hospital by Friday because the doctors didn't want to be on call in the hospital on the weekends. So Sunrise recognized this as a vacancy issue, and they did a promotion on TV that if you had an optional procedure to be done in a hospital, and you checked in on a Friday and had the procedure over the weekend and stayed till Monday, they would send you on Hawaiian Air to Hawaii for a trip. And I
Unreal.
was flabbergasted. I mean, first of all, I thought it was a brilliant way to fill the rooms. But secondarily, I mean, the idea of a hospital advertising and doing a giveaway to get business gave me the incentive and the strength and the courage, because you needed courage in those days to market with lawyer advertising, because you got a lot of criticism from all the
Right.
existing bar associations. That
Yeah.
really helped me have the confidence to do it.
Yeah, and back then it was like you're ostracized for advertising. Now it's you have to. It's
Yeah.
wi- and I'm glad we kind of jumped to this. So you've been very successful. You got a very memorable tagline. You got enough said, call Ed, and the market has changed. But just big picture for those that are still looking to advertise and do TV because there's a lot of distribution, the CPMs are low. What are just some of your tips that you would give any PI attorney when it comes to TV advertising?
Well, it's so complicated. You have a much greater expertise in this than I do. But it used to be all you had to do was put an ad on TV, and the phone rang. It was the easiest thing in the world. Maybe you tried newspaper, didn't work so well. Maybe you tried a little radio, wasn't as good as TV. Internet wasn't around yet. Then the internet came, and in the last 20 years or so, everybody's been trying to figure out how to do the internet, and the competition is so fierce now, and the younger attorneys are so accustomed to marketing and advertising, and it's really it's taught in law school now. It wasn't taught in law school when I was into law school, so it's kind of expected that you're going to have to market at some level. And it's much more acceptable by younger attorneys, and they come into a market and they go into a private practice, and they are going to advertise. So as you said, everything is so fragmented.
Mm-hmm.
You can no longer just put an ad on TV and do well.
Mm-hmm.
My opinion and my advice is you really have to be everywhere, and
Yeah.
I don't know how to do that as successfully as I did it on TV a long time ago. Quite honestly.
Yeah, and even then, even the TV audience is now shifting. The younger, I guess, the Gen Z are now shifting to more streaming. So now you've got, you got people that watch Netflix, you got people that watch Hulu, some watch Amazon, some watch Disney, and all of these different apps. So then that's shifting. So like you said, the omni-channel approach. I do want to kind of shift though, because you've had one huge advantage, and it's just so different because you've had the Ed Bernstein show it's one of Las Vegas's longest running shows. And I got to imagine that just the experience, the attention, how did that opportunity come about? And let's talk about that a bit.
Yeah, in January 1989, I had an idea about doing a television show, and it started out kind of as a consumer-oriented TV show. The original idea that I had was I want to do consumer reports for TV. So if there's a recall with an automobile, with a product, I wanted to inform people about the recall. So we set up a kind of like a magazine type of show where I did a quick informational piece about products that have been recalled. I had a political pundit come on. I had a doctor come on and do a segment, and I had a fitness person come on and do a segment. And it was just a bunch of little segments. Well, after about 6 months of working it that way, I realized that I started to really enjoy the interview part of it. And for selfish reasons, I was meeting incredible people. Sooner or later, everybody comes to Las Vegas. With the conventions, we get every noted author, every rock star, every entertainer, every politician, every sports figure, everybody is here. So my access to talent was unlimited. And I started doing interviews and, interviewing people from the president to Jerry Springer and everybody in between. And it's been just great fun for me to network and meet people. And I don't really have a handle on what it means in the big sense of my marketing. It's probably impossible to measure. It's been 34 years that I've done this every week for 34 years. And we're on the NBC affiliates on Sunday afternoon. Sometimes we get lucky and we're right after a Sunday afternoon football game and have a tremendous audience sometimes. But I really do enjoy meeting the people that I meet, particularly a lot of my heroes from my childhood that are aging rock stars today, and authors. And I really like to learn what I can from authors.
Yeah, a couple though. So stand out. I saw the Fleetwood Mac drummer. Just a couple that stand out in terms of you mentioned a few that are quite memorable for you.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up in music in the 60s and 70s, so all those Motown heroes from Little Richard to Stevie Wonder to Temptations people to English rock and roll people like the Moody Blues, the Monkees, Duran Duran. I've interviewed all those groups for rock people. I was just rewatching the other night Silence of the Lambs, and I had interviewed Anthony Hopkins, and I had forgotten that I had interviewed him, and he was a remarkable guest. But I did spend an afternoon with Anthony Hopkins. I mean, only because I had a TV show. Otherwise, I never would have encountered this man. He's, by the way, a lovely man. Yeah.
Wonderful. So are you, when you walk down the streets and you're going to a restaurant, they're like, hey, Ed Bernstein. Is it because when we're talking about marketing, and I've got my marketing hat right on, you've got the know, like, trust, and it seems like that show hits a lot, right? You're likable. They know you.
It helped segue me into politics at one time in my life. Because I also do a lot of political figures. I also use the show to highlight candidates for judges in Nevada, because I think we really need that. Most people who vote in an election for a judge, we have elected judges here in Nevada, they have no idea who they're voting for. So I'd like to get judges out on our show and do interviews with them to familiarize electorate with them. But I had situation, a personal situation in my life in the year 2000. I had a daughter who was severely ill, who had very, very severe Crohn's disease. She ended up having ostomy bags and catheters, and she had to hook up every night to an IV for 10 hours a night to get nutrition just to survive. She ended up passing about 5 years ago. But when I went through this experience with her, and she was diagnosed at 3 years old when she was in 1992, so for the following 10 years, I lived hospital to hospital with her, going through experimental treatments and fighting with our insurance company to get these treatments approved by the insurance company. And I realized how bad the insurance companies were treating some of these illnesses, particularly when there was biologics that would help people, but they were so expensive the insurance companies weren't covering them. So I decided to give up my law practice, and I did for 2 years. I ran for the U.S. Senate, and I was a Democratic candidate for the U.S. Senate in Nevada. Ended up losing to a guy who subsequently resigned for marital reasons, let's call it that. But it was an incredible experience for me because I got to then meet and travel with U.S. senators from around the country, cabinet members. You know, when you're campaigning for the U.S. Senate, you meet those kind of people, and it was an incredible experience. Probably wasn't the best deal for my marketing because FEC regulations and FCC regulations require that if you're a candidate for national office, that you cannot be on a commercial for another business, because it's considered a campaign contribution to your campaign. So I had to go off the air with my face for a year and a half. People like Glenn Lerner, others moved into the market.